Morning, everyone. That started it. We all set to go? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the Niagara Regional Police Services Board meeting for February the 28th. I do have a few comments to make this morning. Before I do start, I will ask if there's any declarations of conflict of interest from any members. Member McKendrick?
I declare a conflict with item 35 in the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. And at that point in time, because that's part of the consent, we'll vote that in block and leave that one out, and then we will deal with that issue as a separate item in that. Thank you. So minutes from the previous meeting, which is number 25 in your package. I need a mover and seconder for approval. Moved by Member Bonham, seconded by Member McKendrick. All in favor of the minutes from the previous meeting? Thank you. Reports are next from the board chair. I do have some comments this morning. As we begin our meeting this morning, I would like to acknowledge that the land is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is the home to many First Nations, Métis, Inuit people, and this acknowledgement reminds us that the great standard of living that we enjoy in Niagara is directly related to the resources and friendship of the Indigenous people who make up our community. Our Board Award of Excellence. On January 23rd, the board put out a call for nominations to the Board Award of Excellence to all members of the Niagara Regional Police Service. This award was created in 2003 and recognizes members of the service who have performed an outstanding service by making a significant contribution to the Niagara Regional Police Service or the community, and has demonstrated to continue excellence in the performance of their duties. The award will be presented at our annual Awards Day ceremony. And a reminder to the service that nominations close on March 1st, i.e. tomorrow, at which time the board will review the submissions and select a recipient. The Ontario Association of Police Services Board held a zone meeting, which is known as Zone 4. The meeting was held February 26th and was hosted by the Hamilton Police Services Board and the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards and the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police quarterly four-zone meeting. Vice Chair Steele, members Gibson, Stewart, the board's executive director, and myself attended the meeting. At the meeting, I was elected the zone director to serve on the Ontario Association of Police Services Board of Directors, replacing member Vaughn Stewart, who has completed a maximum term of 8 years. And we're grateful for Vaughn's leadership and dedication during those 8 years. Deb Reed was acclaimed as the Secretary-Treasurer to Zone 4, a position she has held since 2007. And on behalf of the board, I would like to extend our thanks to Member Stewart for his service and commitment to the zone and the OACP, and for Deb for her work, ongoing work as the Secretary and Treasurer for Zone 4. The Niagara Regional Police Services Business Plan Working Sessions on February 27th, Member Stewart attended the Services Business Plan Working Group session in the role as chair of the board's Business Plan Committee. Members of the working group continue to work diligently on the completion of a 2019 to 2021 Niagara Regional Police Service Business Plan, and will be assessing the results of a community satisfaction survey. It is anticipated that the draft business plan will be submitted to the board for consideration in April of this year. The State of the Niagara Region Address. On April the 3rd, Regional Chair Jim Bradley will be delivering his State of the Region address to the Niagara Regional business community to highlight the accomplishments of Regional Council. This event is being held from 9 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon at the Scotiabank Convention Center here in Niagara Falls. Vice Chair Steele, members Gale, Gibson, McKendrick, and the board's executive director and myself will be attending this event. I would also like to add this morning that we do have a guest who is not somebody who's been here before. Dwayne Sprague is the police advisor. He's from the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. Dwayne is here as part of the ministry's regular visits that are carried out to police service boards, and he's usually here once a year or so. And we welcome Dwayne and look forward to a close relationship again with the ministry through Dwayne. Just to point out that we do have upcoming meetings. Our next committee meeting is going to be Thursday, March the 14th at 8:30 in the morning, held in this location. And the next full board meeting is on Thursday, March 28th at 8:30 in the morning, again to be held in this room here at police headquarters. Those are my notes this morning. I turn it over to the chief.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. I start my verbal report updating the board with regards to an SIU case that they have closed. On January the 10th, 2018, at approximately 9:20 a.m., one district uniform officers responded to a third-party report of a domestic occurring at a residence in St. Catharines after the third party had received text messages from a female inside the residence requesting assistance. Upon police arrival, the female resident permitted entry into the home and directed the officers to a male who was determined to be in breach of conditions of a recognizance. When the officers attempted to arrest the male, a struggle ensued. The male was able to break free and jump down a staircase to the main floor where he confronted a female resident about calling the police. Another struggle ensued with the officers before the male was taken into custody. The male was transported to Central Holding prior to being transported to the Greater Niagara General Hospital, where he was later diagnosed with a fractured right foot. As a result of the injury diagnosis, a notification was made to the SIU, and they invoked their mandate to investigate. The SIU designated one subject officer and 3 witness officers during this investigation. And in the closure letter, Director Tony Laparco advised the SIU investigation has concluded and that there were no grounds for criminal charges against any officers involved, nor were there any concerns expressed by the SIU Director in regards to any policies in regards to any officers involved in the incident. Just with regards to our homicide statistics for 2019, during the reporting period, we had 2 homicides. I'll provide a little bit further information on those 2 incidents, which brings our total number of homicides in 2019 to 3. By comparison, we had 2 homicides in 2018 and 7 attempted murders. We had 3 homicides and 3 attempts in 2017 and 1 homicide in 2016 and 1 attempt in 2016. So with regards to the first homicide incident that I mentioned, on Tuesday, January 29th at approximately 9:15 p.m., 2 district officers attended a residence in the area of Huggins Street and Gainsborough Avenue in the city of Niagara Falls in response to a serious assault that had just occurred. When officers arrived, they discovered a 52-year-old male had been assaulted with a weapon, sustaining life-threatening injuries. A male youth who was known by the victim had fled the scene prior to arrival. Following an investigation, the youth was located, arrested, and charged. On Friday, February 1st, 2019, the 52-year-old male victim succumbed to his injuries in hospital. The original charges laid against the 17-year-old male have since been upgraded to second-degree murder. And then a second incident that occurred on February 1st, 2019, at approximately 4:30 a.m., uniform officers from the Niagara Regional Police 8 District responded to a business in the area of Main Street East and Bartlett Avenue in Grimsby. Officers and paramedics from Niagara Emergency Medical Services arrived on scene to find a female requiring care for serious injuries. The female was transported to a local hospital where she was pronounced. Further investigation by the Niagara Regional Police Service Homicide Unit has resulted in a second-degree murder charge laid against a 39-year-old Toronto male. I can confirm that in this case as well, the victim and the accused were known to each other. With regards to traffic fatality and serious collisions during the month of January, I can confirm that there were no fatal or life-threatening motor vehicle collisions during the month of January. Just to reflect on our year-end stats for 2018, we had 16 fatal collisions in 2018, and that compares to 18 in 2017, 20 in 2016, 17 in 2015, and 18 in 2014. So our lowest number in 5 years. So we're proud of the efforts of our officers in both the enforcement and education component that they take very seriously. Some items in the news. On January 15th, 2019, 2 district uniform officers responded to a hotel in the area of Lundy's Lane and Brookfield Avenue in Niagara Falls for a weapons call. Officers initially responded to a report of an armed male and shots being fired. When officers arrived on scene, their investigation determined that a disturbance between 2 males had escalated to the point where one was shot by a pellet gun. 49-year-old Niagara Falls male was struck once by the pellet and received superficial injuries. Further investigation led to charges of assault with a weapon against a 60-year-old Niagara Falls male. Since 2018, members of our Guns, Gangs, and Grow unit, our opioid unit, and our St. Catharines Street Crime unit conducted a joint investigation into the sale of crystal methamphetamine and fentanyl from apartments within the apartment building located at 8 Queenston Street in the city of St. Catharines. On January 17th, our officers executed 2 search warrants on apartments in the building believed to be involved in the drug trafficking operation. And as a result, our officers located 6 individuals inside the premises, and 3 are facing criminal charges as a result of their investigation. One of these persons was found to be wanted on an outstanding arrest warrant as well. The officers seized crystal methamphetamine with a street value of almost $17,000, $1,200 in currency, which is believed to be the sale of, the proceeds of drug sales. Another incident in the news in the month of January 2019, members of the Guns, Gangs, and Grow and the opioid unit with our service commenced an investigation into the sale of crack cocaine from a Northwood Drive residence in St. Catharines. The residence is located directly across the street from a public school, and police surveillance showed that drug sales were active during school hours. Our officers were granted a search warrant for this address, and on January 22nd at approximately 4 p.m., members of the emergency task unit arrested one of the individuals after he left the residence. They then attended and executed the search warrant at the address on Northwood Drive and arrested 2 more persons inside the home. A search of the home was conducted, and the officers seized crack cocaine and powdered cocaine as well as currency believed to be the proceeds of their drug sales. 3 people were arrested and charged, including a young offender. In total, about $2,700 in cocaine was seized. Just in the news with regards to our frontline naloxone deployment. In a continued commitment to officer and community safety, the Niagara Regional Police Service is in the process of expanding naloxone distribution to all of our frontline officers within the service. As of Friday, January 25th, we are now deploying Narcan nasal spray to frontline officers once they've received the appropriate training. Previously, only officers in our specialty units, such as our drug units, street crime units, special constables, and our court security and prisoner management, and some civilian members involved in our evidence handling were trained and issued naloxone. During this next phase, frontline members will receive training and then will be issued a kit containing 2 doses of Narcan nasal spray. This next phase is anticipated to take about 3 to 4 months for all sworn members to cycle through our training unit and be equipped with naloxone. And we certainly want to extend thanks to public health at the region and Chief Kevin Smith at EMS. His personnel were involved in a train the trainer to allow our members to provide the training on the use of Narcan. I do also want to highlight that on Saturday, February 23rd was our first successful deployment of the Narcan. We responded to a call in Niagara Falls, and a 22-year-old female was in medical distress, and our officers deployed Narcan, and with the assistance of EMS, who also showed up subsequent to our officers, and the female is expected to make a full recovery from that deployment of Narcan. Another incident in the news in Port Colborne. Since January 2019, members of our morality unit with the Niagara Regional Police Service have been investigating the sales of heroin and fentanyl from a Mellenby Avenue address in Port Colborne. During the investigation, our officers identified a male responsible for the sale of drugs from the residence and observed him making suspected drug deals while mobile in a vehicle. On Wednesday, February 13th, following a search warrant, officers seized fentanyl and heroin, oxycodone, and currency believed to be the proceeds of the drug sales. 3 people were arrested and charged. In total, our officers seized over $6,000 in fentanyl and heroin and oxycodone, and $900 in currency was seized. The fentanyl was found to be tinted purple, similar to other seizures that we've located throughout the region. On July 25th, the Niagara Regional Police Central Fraud Unit was contacted by the Niagara Region Ontario Disability Support Program regarding possible fraudulent criminal activity. Detectives from our fraud unit conducted an extensive investigation and subsequently arrested a Niagara Falls female, and she now faces charges with an alleged fraud in the is estimated at over $150,000. Some human remains that were identified some time ago in January. Members of the Niagara Regional Police Recovery Unit, assisted by the Emergency Task Unit, commenced a ground search of the Welland Canal. Took place in the area between Lock 1 and Lock 2. After that portion of the canal had been emptied for the winter. During the course of the search, officers located human remains, working with the Forensic Services Unit and the Office of the Coroner. The remains were recovered and sent for examination. At the time of the recovery, the identity of the found remains were unknown. On February 22nd, our detectives were contacted by the Office of the Coroner and learned the identity of the deceased. As a result, detectives met with the next of kin to advise them of their findings. The deceased in this incident has been identified as Quentin Bingley of St. Catharines. Foul play is not suspected, and as I'm sure all can appreciate, the Bingley family has requested privacy during this very difficult time. And we certainly would like to extend our thanks to the community for their outpouring of support and assistance throughout that very difficult investigation. On Sunday, February 17th, our officers attended in the area of Shishler Road and Darby Road in Welland after a member of the community reported locating what they believed to be human remains. And with the assistance of members of the Ontario Provincial Police, the remains were recovered and a post-mortem examination was conducted on Thursday, February 21st in Toronto. As a result of the post-mortem examination, the results have been positively identified as being that of Samantha Lee Lambert of St. Catharines. Samantha Lambert had been reported missing to the Niagara Regional Police in September of 2018, and her disappearance has been continuously investigated since that time. A cause of death has not yet been determined, and pending further testing that's being conducted at the Center of Forensic Science. That's the end of my public portion of my remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any members have questions of the chief on his report this morning? I just have one. The NORCAN, that's deployed for each officer, right? So they get that as part of their kit that they take out on the road?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Just to note on that item number 35 is excluded at this point in time, and that will be voted on separately. The items of the consent agenda range from number 26 to number 43. Could I have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor? Moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Stewart. Discussions on the items? Well, I have one, and that deals with report number 32. That's the Administration of Public Complaints. I just wanted to basically on page 2 highlight the fact that we have significantly reduced the amount of time, but the complaints are now being taken to being through our process. We went from 122 days in 2017, and we are now down to 68 days. So I commend the service for getting that number down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oftentimes it depends on the nature of the investigations that are undertaken, the complexity of them and whatnot. And given the small sample size, I don't know that we can take full credit for it, but certainly our officers are very diligent in maintaining the timelines that are set out by the OIPRD, and we take those requirements very seriously. So thank you for your comments. Just notice on the report as well, in the past we've reported, we've attached a table which has been somewhat convoluted or difficult for board members to understand. We have condensed it to more of a narrative format and hoping that it meets with the board's approval.
Okay, thank you. If there's no comments on any of the specific items within the consent agenda, we did have a mover and seconder. Sorry, Member Bonham.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you, I'd like to turn your attention to 36. That's the annual report, collection of identifying information in certain circumstances, prohibition, and duties. And I'm noting on page 1 here in 2018, we contacted a total of 3 people, and in 2017 it was 40. That's random contacts in the community with regard to people of concern to the police during their patrols. I'm wondering what the number was in 2016 for comparative purposes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a difficult number to discern because the legislation wasn't in place prior to 2017, and the way that we captured information, not only here in Niagara Regional Police, but across all police services in Ontario, didn't fall into the categories that are being requested now within the legislation, which is quite prescribed. So the short answer is I don't have that data for you. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison.
I understand that. So it's not broken down the same manner, but to suggest that we don't have any idea, I don't think is in the cards, is it? Like, we would have at least 1,000 contacts, wouldn't we have, in 16 and 17? Not broken down and categorized as here, but on a random basis, wouldn't we have well over 1,000 contacts?
through you, Mr. Chair. So how we and many other police services captured data within the Versaterm street check portion of the records management system. For us, one of the key areas that we captured in the street check category were traffic ticket warnings. And we had, in 2016 and in previous years, we had issued thousands of traffic ticket warnings. So when you compare our data to Hamilton or Halton or whatever, unless they're capturing traffic ticket warnings in that same category, again, that's why I say it's not an apples to apples comparison. As well, our officers would have engaged many more than just 3 people as captured in 2018. It's where we've actually collected identifying information from people during those interactions. That's what's being captured. As well, prior to 2017 and currently, a lot of the information that we are recording within the street check component of Versaterm is intelligence gathering. So we may go by an address that is known to be where drug dealing is taking place, and we may record a license plate of a vehicle that's in the driveway of that. So in essence, we have not triggered the legislation because we haven't asked anybody for any identifying information, but we are still recording information, if that helps in any way.
Yes, thank you, Chief. I guess on page 4, I'm looking at, I guess this format for presentation is laid out by the government, is it? That tells us how we have to parse the contacts and lay them out, what kind of analysis we need to be doing?
It's very prescribed in the legislation as to what we must report on an annual basis, yes.
I get that. When I'm looking at examination for potential overrepresentation, with a sample size of 3 contacts, we don't have anywhere close to a statistically significant sample. So any attempts to draw conclusions, in my opinion, and I think any statistician will tell you, is nonsensical. I understand it's prescribed, but nevertheless, you can't get anything of any significance out of 3 samples and attempt to draw any kind of conclusions. So I just want to put that out there, and you may or may not share that, but as far as I'm concerned, and I think my concern is we're tying up a lot of people trying to draw conclusions about from a sample size that isn't capable of delivering that kind of information. So I appreciate the effort, but I just want to get it out to the public that there's a lot of stuff here that we're doing that has absolutely no consequence whatsoever because the data analysis is inconsequential. Thank you.
Member Stewart?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Chief. Are you aware, like the statistics that we have from Niagara, do they get compiled provincially with all the other services and get a provincial picture of this kind of thing? Are you aware that if that happens or not?
Through your, what you're saying is whether those statistics are shared amongst police services? I know they're shared with the ministry. I'm not sure if ultimately there's like an annual report compiled by the ministry. Perhaps Mr. Sprague, who's here, may be able to offer some comment on that.
Good Board Chair, there is no requirement, just let the board know as well, for these annual reports to be submitted to the ministry. So right now, as far as I know, there's no ongoing work to put that information together in terms of a province-wide annual compilation.
Well, thank you. Just from the mathematical point of view, I certainly concur with Mr. Bonham. It's known as the law of small numbers, that with 3 people, each one of them is 33 1/3%. It's like, I know we're following ministry rules here, and I think the public should be aware that, you know, although it's somewhat meaningless with only 3 people, there's a requirement that we do this and we present it for what it is, and as long as the public understands that. As former math teacher, I know about the law of small numbers, and it's makes an odd looking thing. So it would be interesting if the ministry did compile from all of them, then they'd have a significant numbers where now they could draw some meaning from it. Anyway, I guess to our public, you know, 3 is not significant. So thanks, Chief.
Any other questions on any of the other than the consent? So then we have a mover and seconder, so show of hands and vote. Remember, number 35 is excluded. Thank you. So that's dealt with. So number 35 will be noted that Member McKendrick is abstaining from this item. This is a annual report coming to us dealing with the response to emotionally disturbed mental illness and developmentally disabilities under our bylaw. I can have a mover and seconder. Moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Bonham. Any discussions on this item? Okay. Show of hands then, please. Thank you. That item is now dealt with. Moving under new business, the next one is number 44. That is a report on the independent street check review from Justice Tulloch. There's a document in your report. Is received for information. Mover and seconder, please. Member Gale. Member McKendrick. Any discussions on this item? I do have one. From our perspective, Niagara Regional Police Service perspective, are there any steps that next steps for us as a result of this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think what we're all waiting for at this point in time is the ministry has reviewed or is currently reviewing the legislation or the recommendations that were put forward by Mr. Tulloch, and we'll wait to see what is incorporated into the legislation, and of course we'll abide by whatever the legislation is.
Okay, thank you. Everybody in favor to receive for information? Thank you. That's dealt with. Number 45. This is a member of understanding on the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance certification. It's a NRPS training process. There's a approval of a memorandum of understanding. I will turn this over to the chief to take us through that. Sorry. Oh, sorry, that was already approved. Sorry, missed that. I remember the e-polling. So this was approved by e-polling. Mover and seconder, please. Member Gibson. Member Steele. All in favor? Thank you. Number 46 is the Verified Alarm Response Program. It's a 6-month update. And I would turn that over to the chief, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. You'll recall, I believe it was Superintendent Frayne provided the board with a report on the verified alarm process, and we implemented that in 2018, and this is providing the board with a status update of the first 6 months, and you can see that the number of false alarms calls that we have not responded to has significantly increased, thereby freeing up our officers to be able to do more proactive work on the front line. It's decreased. Sorry, decreased. The number that we haven't responded to is increased, I guess, but yeah. We're saying the same thing.
Thank you. A mover and seconder, please. Member Gale, seconded by Member McKendrick. All in favor? Thank you. Number 47. This is the financial variance overview for the ending of the year. The motion is before you, subject to approval by Regional Council, et cetera, et cetera. I will only comment that our Police Service Board Executive Director should be commended for $148,000 savings, money that was not expended. On the service itself at $173,000 as well. So again, shows very good financial management on behalf of our board and also on the service. So numbers that we should all be proud of. So I need a mover and seconder, please. So Member Bonham, Member Gibson, Member Bonham.
Yes, thank you, Chair. When I look at the summary on Appendix 1, one thing jumps off the page to me is total occupancy and infrastructure. We spent, as I understand it, 59% of our budget. Hopefully there's some identified and attributable causes to the under expenditure, and hopefully they're going to continue, but I'm just wondering what it was that attributed to significant under expenditure in that area.
I'll have Ms. Laura Rulo, our finance manager, walk you through that response.
Through to the chair. So what's in that line, that category, is our minor building renovations, and we just had savings in that particular line of the $135,000. Other items that go in there is janitorial supplies, leases from our antenna sites and so forth, but the main favorable variance resulting from that was just underspending in our minor building.
So is that a result of the upgrades in our buildings, like consolidating and with the new headquarters coming up and shutting down some ancillary facilities, et cetera? Is that what we're seeing here, is improvements because of new builds?
That would be correct, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We got a mover and seconder? Yes. Show of hands in favor? Thank you. Number 48, special fund request. This is the Pathstone Mental Health Foundation. This is a request from the special fund. A mover and seconder, please. Member Stewart, Member Steele, Member Gale.
Thank you, Chair. And first off, I start off by saying Pathstone is a great organization. But this has climbed over the years. Now it's up to $3,000. We're taking the public's money and donating it to a charity, and there's a lot of worthy charities out there. But I think this has gotten too expensive for us, especially with the cutbacks that we've tried to institute through our CAO, and that we have a problem. Our rules are always police involvement or if it shows cutbacks in crime. But this one has gone far too much for us to be donating $3,000 for. I think I challenge us to find any events over $1,000, maybe $1,500, even the OAPSB events. We don't pay that much, and that's our group. So respectfully, I ask you to have a recorded vote on this, at least have that show up in the minutes who voted for this, because I think we're getting out of our league and we're taking the public's money donated to us. I have a problem when this happens at the region too, where the cities and the region are taking the public's money and donating to charities, and I challenge that this has gotten out of our league. If they're asking $1,000 for a significant event, and that, fine, but it's getting too expensive. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to point out that the special fund, it is money that is the result of auctions. It's not money that comes out of the actual operating budget. So it's not an item that is part of, let's say, a budget approval item. It's money that is gained from the sale of lost and found property, et cetera.
Chair, I'll challenge you on that then, that this is money that shouldn't be just donated to certain charities in that amount. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. It's the taxpayers' money if you look at it that way coming back from the auctions. So,
thank you. Any other comments on the item? Members Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. What's the financial history on this over the last 5 years, do we know?
Our executive director would be able to bring us up to date on that.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Typically, there is, I believe it might be a quarterly report now, or is there a monthly report? I'm just skimming the agenda that does come. Here it is here, item number 33, quarterly report. It's on the public agenda for the Special Fund Administration, and it has a list of all the items that have been funded through the special funds. So I would just ask if you would turn to item 33. And on Appendix 2, you will see the list of special funds activity at the top, not the bottom portion which deals with informants, but the top which deals with our various donations and sponsorships that's been made over that quarter. I don't have the annual listing before me, but I can certainly get that for you. It will likely be here maybe next month. And the chief would like to speak, sorry.
Chief?
I believe there's a reference in the report number 48 that there's, the board has supported the program for the past 5 years at the gold sponsorship level in the amount of $2,500 from a historical perspective.
Member Bonham?
So as I understand it, the driver for the escalation of contribution is the board's compliance, should I say, in supporting gold sponsorship, which continues to move up at the direction of Pathstone. I think that's what's driving the number up, is we're tied into a gold level of sponsorship, and the Pathstone Mental Health Group increased that periodically to satisfy their demands or try to meet their contribution goals. Thank you.
Member Gibson?
But at any time, you said tied into the gold, we're not tied in at any time annually. We could change and drop down to a lower level and thereby reduce if we do feel it's getting too high.
That's my understanding, Kevin. As I read the literature, it's us following along with the gold sponsorship, which I guess, somewhere in the past we've traditionally done. So the institution's raising the level of contribution that would be required to maintain that sponsorship level. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from board members on this? So it's been asked for a recorded vote. We have a mover and seconder. So show of hands in favor of the contribution. And then those opposed to the contribution. And one person abstaining. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you. Number 49 is a special fund request for the Ontario Association of Police Services Board. This one is for a contribution of $1,000 from the special fund. A mover and seconder for this item, please. Member Steele, Member Bonham. Any discussion on the item? Show of hands in favor. Thank you. Item number 50, special fund request, Canadian American Law Enforcement Organization, or CALEO, training symposium. The request here is for $250. Mover and seconder, please. Member Gibson, Member Bonham. Any questions on the item? Show of hands. Sorry, Member Bonham.
With regard to this CALEO training symposium, do we get any kind of information as a board or et cetera about what the curriculum is or what the agenda is, or anything coming back to us to support the $250 other than an event was held that would give us some idea of what the discussions are, so we might wrap our minds around how valuable or not the training is? Thank you.
I'll ask the chief to comment on that, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can certainly provide the board with the agenda that's scheduled for this event. But in past events, and I've attended some of those, they tend to be oftentimes a debrief of a major incident that would have happened. I believe the incident that occurred in Las Vegas, they had a guest speaker come down and provide the officers who were in attendance with a better understanding of how that incident unfolded and other similar type of contemporary challenges facing police across the borders, really. So it's this year's there is a report on terrorism, both global and domestic. There's the FBI is doing a presentation on an active shooter scenario that occurred in Chattanooga. The Toronto Police Service is providing a debrief on the Millard homicide investigation. There's an officer-involved shooting presentation that's being put on by Pennsylvania State Police. Interpol is providing a presentation on not sure what that is actually. And there's a outlaw motorcycle gang undercover investigation that is being debriefed as well. So lots of relevant material that is provided at a very low cost to our members. So we've always found it to be a very worthwhile event to participate in.
Thank you, Chief. I'm not questioning it from the standpoint of should we or shouldn't we. I just think the board should be in receipt of some information to support the expenditure so that should there be questions asked, we're not caught having no information about what's going on. Thank you.
Through Mr. Chair, in the future then, if we have similar requests, we can, if it's available, we can attach an agenda to the report so that the board has that information. You're 100% correct in your assertion.
Yeah, and I was going to make that comment. If we get the agenda with the request, that would help. Chief, you indicated there's 20 officers attending. Is that your number still?
I don't have the exact number of our officers. I think it's 175 international police officers from 55 separate police agencies. Yes, sorry, upwards of 20 police officers from the Niagara Regional Police Service. My apologies, yes.
So they're from some of the specialized units that are...
Correct, and our crime analysts often attend as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on the matter? Show of hands then, please, to approve. Thank you. Item number 51, special fund request. Niagara Regional Police Cuffs on Cancer team. This is the Rankin Cancer Run. The request here is for $500, a mover and seconder. Member Bonham, Member Gibson, any discussion on the matter? Show of hands, please, for approval. Thank you. Item number 52 is a board bylaw. This is a legal indemnification for auxiliary members. This is to adopt bylaw number 383 for 2019. A mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Member Stewart and Member Steele, any discussion on the bylaw? Member Bonham?
This is actually a retraction of an initiative we undertook as a consequence of anticipated changes to the Safer Ontario. We had been proactive and now we're retracing our steps because of further developments. Thank you.
We always like to be ahead of the curve. Show of hands, please, in favor. Thank you. So this item is dealt with. We've got one new item, which is number 53. This was the special meeting that we held last Thursday, the 21st. It was a public meeting. Unfortunately, it was not held in this room, so we were unable to live stream it. These are the minutes from that meeting where we made some adjustments to the budget going forward at tonight's regional council meeting. Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Member Gibson, Member Stewart, any questions on this matter? Show of hands of approval. Thank you. Any new business in the public section? Not seeing any, then we're going to adjourn. We'll take a 15-minute break, and then we will start into confidential. Thank you.